Good morning, DZRJ, 8:10 a.m. The Voice of the Philippines proudly presents Piracy Watch with attorney Sarah Jane Sugitan, exploring the concepts of intellectual property rights and protection, teaching you how to protect what you create. And now, here's your host, Sarah Jane Sugitan.
Hi everyone, welcome on Piracy Watch. Joining me this morning is Mr. Harry Dabotko. Malapit ko na po maging co-host si Mr. Harry for Piracy Watch, where we talk anything and everything intellectual property. Now, for those of you who are not yet aware what intellectual property is, well, it's the commodity of the future. It's something that we all create, meaning the songs, poems, PowerPoint presentations, brands, inventions, technical solutions to problems, including iPads, pharmaceutical drugs, and everything that's called intellectual property. Now, you can only protect that and own that if you register your trademarks and patents with the Philippine Intellectual Property Office. Do call them up at 751-0395 for those of you who'd like to register your brands as trademarks and have them titled. Same goes for those who own inventions but do not have yet titles or patent protection over inventions. Call up the Intellectual Property Office at 751-0395. The latest update from the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines: in a move to prevent the use of Philippine seaports as entry and exit points of pirated and counterfeited goods, the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines and the Philippine Ports Authority signed an agreement last March 9 to implement stricter border control measures. It is a challenge to police all 7,107 islands of the country, which serve as channels of trade in pirated and fake goods, according to Ricardo R. Blancaflor, Director General of the IPOPHIL. Under the agreement, IPOPHIL may assign or detail its personnel to work with the PPA in the conduct of border inspection to prevent shipment or distribution of counterfeit and pirated goods. For its part, the Philippine Ports Authority will assist the IPOPHIL and other law enforcement agencies in the surveillance, investigation, and apprehension of persons within the ports. The PPA will also start strict monitoring of possible entry to and exit from all the seaports under its jurisdiction. This move comes within the IPOPHIL's O-Plan Holistic in an effort to seize opportunities and address gaps in intellectual property rights enforcement. Now, our question for the week comes from Sean Lam, and this segment is produced by the Filipinas Copyright Licensing Society. From Sean: I work as a freelance writer and researcher, and one of my employers is a web-based company. I've submitted several articles to which I got paid just enough for my daily needs. It was okay with me until I found my article in the web and was credited to an army officer from South Korea. I am so disappointed. I didn't have any contract with the web-based company, and they just give me topics to write about. Now, I'll submit my work to them when my work is done, but it never occurred to me that they would be selling my articles to other people. What should I do, and can I ask them to at least put my name as a byline for every work that I submit? Again, the question is from Shan Lam, and he's asking for advice since he he worked for a web-based company, submitted articles, got paid for the articles, and yet he found his articles in another website under a different byline and without corresponding compensation. Okay, this answers from attorney Louis Calvario of the IPOPHIL. Sean, the best thing to do next time is to have a written contract with your web-based company employer. It's very hard to enforce copyright over your articles over the internet. Not having a contract makes it practically impossible to enforce your rights. In any case, being a freelance writer without written contracts over your articles, you own the copyright over all your works. Therefore, your employer violated your economic right for publishing your work without permission. He also violated your moral right by allowing another person to take credit or use a different byline when it's you who created that work. You have two causes of action to file either a civil or criminal case in court. Of course, it would be best to try and settle the matter amicably with the company. If you wish, you may demand that your name appear on every submission that you make. See, that's a problem with enforcing copyright over the internet. For those of you who upload your articles, your photos, your other works, even your music online, please do ensure that they cannot be downloaded if you do not want to share your works the way Sean did. Okay, you can also opt to just upload it and have everyone copy or download your work for free if that is your intention, in which case you have waived your right over the copyright. Okay, joining me this morning is Mr. Harry Tambotcon. We're going to talk about essentially copyright, since April 26 is the World Intellectual Property Day, and April 23 is the World Book of Authors, World Day for Authors and Books, or something like that. Something like that for UNESCO, and IPOPHIL and WIPO will celebrate the World IP Day April 26. And for the whole month, coming month, we'll be talking about copyright. And copyright, just for everyone's information, is a form of intellectual property. Just like trademarks, branding, which we talk about frequently here on the show, and the other form of intellectual property that's very, very common is patents over scientific inventions and technical solutions, so be it drugs or technology. So you need to protect all that. But for copyright, we're dealing with creative work, creative in the sense that it's either a literary work or a musical work or even a performance that you have created. And for this, we're going to discuss how you obtain copyright and what's it all about.
Well, good morning, attorney.
Good morning.
That's a very interesting topic or complaint emailed by Shan. What if you had an employee and your office is, let's say, in communication, or you're a PR company, so you employ people around you and you have copywriters? Or, for example, especially in ad agencies, advertising agencies always have PR people around them, and or copywriters. Copywriters meaning the profession of writing, putting words together to give a specific message.
Copyright, right as in WRITE,
yes.
Not right as in human rights.
Not
copyright.
in human rights, yeah. Copywriters,
right.
meaning people who are
Writer.
actually writers.
Yes,
diba?
writers.
Because in ad agencies, that's exactly what they do. Now, you employ these people, they come in, you have a working contract, and their position is copywriting, to basically write articles, columns, or a campaign, put together words that promote a specific campaign to sell a specific product. In that specific case, does the composer retain their right to the work that they publish or put out? Because if I employ them, I figure their output is mine. Correct me if I'm wrong, diba? It's like, okay, I'm a leader of a band. I'll give an example, aside, almost the same thing. I'm a leader of a band. I own the band. I pay for the rehearsals. I buy their costumes. I feed them. And then I get the gigs or the work outside. I get paid. I get a bigger commission before I share the balance to them. Now, the band will now create music. But since I own the band, I'm the producer. Who actually now owns the composition? The composer himself or the owner, in this case, the producer? It's like this network. The network says they disclaim anything that we say when it's editorialized, but things that are produced by the network is normally copyright or owned by the network.
By
but
the
the
network.
composers, it's still it's not the network that composes, it's the people that comes into the network. In that situation, how does that work?
Okay, copyright is literally the right to make copies of a work. Now, usually copyright for books, that's very simple. It's the author's copyright, meaning he or she owns it, and then the publisher gets profits from the sales. But for example, in the case of a band or an advertising company creating copy, meaning not an ad, music that go with it, graphic design, and then the words that go with it. Usually, as a general rule, copyright is with the individual. Now, unless it is stated in the contract with that employee that it is a commissioned work, meaning I hired you to write that work.
So that's the clue.
So it's
Yung
still
pala yun.
contractual. After all, intellectual property is a private right. So it's a private right. It's much. It's almost similar as owning a cell phone. It depends on you how are you going to use it, who are you going to allow to use it, and how, you can even
Because
destroy it if you want to.
in music, for example, you hire a musician and you tell them, okay, compose to me a song, I want to make it a jingle. And the real producer is the account, or let's say the advertising account. And then they go to the ad agency, and the ad agency will now go to somebody who, okay, make one for me, I'm paying you for it. At the end of the day, after the composition, the client who's actually paid for everything can say, that is ours, that's our property. Pwede yun, di ba?
Yes, they can say it's their property because I hired you to do that.
So in the case of Sean, how come Attorney Louis was saying that she has, or he has recourse, either criminal or civil, when the person was hired basically to copyright or to write for the website or the web company? The web company, after they get the article, can sell it. Hindi kaya? It doesn't work that way.
Okay, as I said, copyright is, how you use it depends on contract, on your agreement. In this case, there was no agreement, so the copyright is retained by the author. So Sean
If
did
it's not specific, if you
Yes,
don't
it should
have...
be specific. It should be commissioned in the sense that, for example, I hire you to build me a sculpture for my house.
Yes, when the sculpture is mine at the end. I
Yeah,
can say I
the
built it.
product, yes, the sculpture is mine, but the copyright, meaning the byline or the credit, still goes to the sculptor. Meaning,
Even if you produce it, even if you pay for it, you have to give attention.
you have a right over the tangible
Material.
property. For example, a song, let's break it down. There are multiple copyright owners in a song. There's the performer, who has a right over his or her interpretation of the song.
The composer.
The lyricist, yes, and the composer also have individual rights as to respective rights as to the music, the notes, and the lyrics. And when they're all put together, no one has exclusive right over another. I mean, it is not mutually exclusive once it is performed
So,
or produced.
Can
But
we buy music? Can we buy it? Can I say, I have the money, I'm frustrated, I don't have the talent, and I have the ego. Now, I want to buy, no, I'm just giving an example. And I want to buy a song. So I have it composed, I have it performed, I have it recorded.
for example, you're a politician and you want a jingle for your campaign.
Yeah, for example,
something
but
like
I
that.
want to say that the
It's yours.
byline is, I created that. O, di ba? Yung parang ganun. For example, Pinoy's, he was saying, kung walang korap, walang mahirap. As it turns out, after the election, after a lot of study and research, it's not necessarily unique. And even the advocacy, it's embedded in the Constitution. The Constitution says that, you can't be corrupt. I mean, hulihin ka. And yet that was his political platform, and it worked, and it made it look to a lot of people like, wow, naiiba siya. He had a position. When in reality, it's not. Must we, as owners, producers, or whatnot, give title or give credit to those who actually created, even if we buy the intellectual property? Can we buy intellectual property? Maybe that's a
Yes.
better question.
Yes, you can definitely buy it. It has to be agreed upon. It has to be clear that, for example, I'm an advertising agency. I'm selling to a client who wants to buy this commercial, this ad campaign. It has to be clear with the advertising company that I own all the rights. You cannot claim a byline, or I will not give
so
you credit.
buy the rights, but not necessarily say
No,
that it's
it has
yours.
to be agreed upon. It
Ah,
has. I mean,
specific.
me as an author, kasi copyright consists of two things: moral right, which
Moral.
means that you will always own the work. You will always be attributed as creating that work. The other right is economic. You can always buy economic rights.
So you
But
can
moral
sell.
right always stays with the author. For example, Ramon or Lina will always be the Ramon or Lina who created the sculptures,
Yes,
the
yes.
glass sculptures, diba? You cannot buy his moral right from him, but I can buy the sculpture. Same goes for songs. Unless it's an orphan work or a work by the government, in which case there is no copyright, because under the law, the government has no copyright over Supreme Court decisions, the laws that we promulgate. The government does not have a right to that. There are exceptions. The news of the day is also not copyrightable. So ideas you cannot copyright. So there are exceptions to this, which cannot be appropriated, cannot be private, cannot be said to be owned by anyone. It's part of the public domain. Even